What you have is you have an untapped market, from our opinion, of casinos that maybe sat back or their states weren't online yet, and as this legalization is happening, they can quickly adapt and become a hub for sports programming, sports viewing.
Welcome, everyone. This is Mariusz Konieczny. I am chatting with Hank Frecon of Goat Industries. Thank you for joining me.
Nice to meet you.
So let's take a few minutes. Maybe, Hank, if you can introduce yourself, your background, and then we'll go into Goat Industries and what the company does.
Sure. So nice to meet everybody. My name is Hank Frecon. I've been in the tech industry since 1997, right out of college. Started out in the early days of the internet when my dad once told me that he didn't know if that was going to be a thing. It might be a fad. So happy to say it wasn't, and I picked a good career direction. Over the years, always had success in launching and building early stage companies, being part of the executive leadership team or leading the teams. And this one's no different. What we like about this space, and what I like in my last 10 years of my career, maybe more now, has been really the focus on media and entertainment technology. Yeah, it's actually been much longer, closer to 15 or so, I think, when I look back. And it was very interesting at that time to think about how we could move the format of video into all these new models that were going to be conducive to an internet-based medium. And so when we got into this specific area with Goat, us joining the team there, we were very excited to be able to focus on the application of immersive relationships to sports wagering, sports betting, personalization of data for sports fans and sports enthusiasts, and most importantly, unique distribution models that get the sports teams and the sports communities access to areas and reach those fans and do it on terms that are friendly to their monetization goals. So that was really all of our KPIs when we built the tech and really launched it into this area. And so that's a little bit about me and a little bit about where I'm focused.
Now, the sports betting industry, maybe we can talk a little bit about what just happened, because it's a new industry. It used to be kind of like alcohol. It used to be illegal, but then it became legal. So could you maybe talk about that a little bit, that background for my audience?
Yeah, the sports betting industry, I think, is like a lot of, markets that, we've seen over the, whether it's prior to my lifespan or in my lifespan, like cannabis, where, regulations have been relaxed or there's a legalization to it. And I think once that happens, what we've seen on a capitalistic level, is you've seen adoption curves change from the way they were viewed prior, which, sports wagering previously was very much a numbers, a thing you did, in the shadows, right? And I think the legalization, starting with 2018, really paved the way to what's called social betting. No one's really gambling their house. They're friends. They're making bets. They're betting on things that are fun within the action of the game. So it's in game betting, that's called. And so it really opens it up to more of that social and fun relationship that you can have with the betting, and a little wager is always fun to have on the line, with whether it's the company like a FanDuel, or it's fun just with yourself, your friends, your peers. That's called peer to peer. So yeah, I think that's what's really changed the shape of it. Is it's not so much a dark thing anymore. It's really much more conducive to just making the experience of watching sports more fun, especially when you're with so many new sports now coming on the scene, with the amount of content and the amount of distribution and the tools and commoditization of video distribution and video content production, which we knew was going to happen as an industry. It's opened up a lot of corridors for collegiate level sports to have wider viewing audiences, unique sports, or maybe sports that didn't get a lot of play prior, like women's volleyball or women's soccer, which now have huge fan bases and are great ways to engage. But you may not know every athlete, and that's where the data comes in. That's where the the experience of knowing that athlete, a little bit more about them. One of our favorite ones is in the mixed martial arts domain, and just a lot of those fighters change very frequently, and being able to bet on them, learn about them, know them, it's all part of the action.
Goat Industries is a publicly traded entity that recently acquired BETSource, and this is where you come in. Um, so, so maybe you could explain this what just happened to my audience.
Sure, yeah. So we were really excited when we were approached by Goat Industries. We learned about the vehicle at that time and their ambitions to really kind of focus on artificial intelligence and the application of it in entertainment media. And when they learned about what we were doing with creating a more immersive advertising relationship, more personalization, shoppable, and ultimately integrating sports betting into the experience in real time for various sports books and casinos. I think they got excited about what we were doing at BetSource, and so um, we engaged, and we learned to like each other a lot through the process, and ultimately, recently, and it's now public, have closed and announced the transaction. And yeah, so we're just excited for the journey. We're excited for the opportunity to be one of their portfolio companies and scale with that. So.
Let's talk about that industry. What is it? Because since the industry is new, I guess there's some problems. There's some problems, inefficiencies with the way uh, betting operates. So you're coming in, BetSource as a company. What is it that? What kind of problem is it that you're solving? What is it that you're bringing to the table? How are you better?
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting to think about the problem, right? So the fundamental problem with media and entertainment at a macro level right now is the gap in traditional advertising and the acceptance of that as a medium, right? Today, when I grew up, we saw about 40 some ads an hour. Um, that was a tolerable experience. Today, the only thing that really gets close to that is an NFL game at 37 ads an hour. And those advertising models are very interruptive. It's always the joke being that's when you go to the bathroom. That's when you get your beer, you know. And the point being is that no one's paying attention, right? And so for many reasons, that ad dollar, that ad unit is not holding up as much. There's also a lot of pressure by social media on mediums that are more traditional, like TV media, TV television media, and because of that, there's small to medium businesses that traditionally would have gone there in the 80s and 90s or done sponsorships have, shifted their focus and their spending over to social, where they get a more immersive, a more dynamic relationship with the advertisement that they placed and know how it did its performance value. So when we look at the opportunity by immersing our technology stack into the sports relationship, we're doing fundamentally what the internet has done very well in desktop computers and mobile phones in a TV experience. That is, we're creating utility. And so there's an adage in tech that says good utility and good content, when coupled together, create a winning formula. Content alone is not good enough, and utility alone is not good enough. We can see lots of examples of companies that had great utility, but their content experience was not great or inadequate. Lots of mediums like television where the content experience is great, there's no utility. What we do ultimately is we bring utility, just like Facebook does, just like Google does, right? We bring utility to the viewing experience of sports content, and that utility is data relationships. Who are the athletes? What are they doing? How well are they? Are they a new rookie sensation? Are they newly traded to that team? All the stats and information at your fingertips. We bring in personalized advertising relationships and that are disguised and maybe more attractive. Maybe they happen when the goal is scored or just after their instant replay instead of at a lull in the break. We also inject them into the content, or we take advantage of sponsorships for sponsors that are, putting their dollars into those sports teams. They want to know who saw them, what saw them, like data transparency. And last but not least, that ability to build in shoppable and sports betting and other types of engaging activations give the audience and the sports content owner and the distribution folks and all of the relative parties in the ecosystem a real-time understanding of the consumer relationship, and it puts things back on the consumer's terms versus somebody deciding what they should see. So ultimately, around the horn, when you check every box between the ecosystem of, whether it's the casinos that we're targeting, the at-home users that we're targeting, the consumers, the distribution companies, the sports books, and even the TV manufacturers, we've created a winning ecosystem for everybody to all boats rise with the tide, as they say.
You said that you are targeting casinos
Mhm.
with your product. Uh, so why casinos? What benefit do you bring to the casinos that they don't already have?
Yeah, so the casinos, have, and traditionally casinos, in the United States, and I'll speak more specifically about the United States market because that's, our main focus right now. While we will obviously are talking about deals in Canada and Mexico and other locations, the U.S. is our main focus. And in the United States, the casino, sort of entertainment zones were always, Las Vegas and Atlantic City. And what's happened is the Native American communities and Native American casinos have recognized those successes and brought them into their markets, those kind of Las Vegas style experiences. And, that market is growing at an amazing rate. I think it's going to be, a $44 billion market this year and growing in the United States. And they're just starting to realize that they need to add sports betting and actually add home betting. And as states in the United States, especially for listeners outside of the United States, it's sometimes hard to understand, but states are essentially their own country, or they have their own rules, as a way to think about it. And so do the tribal casinos. These are sovereign nations that are, within the United States structure, but ultimately can make their own rules on things like sports betting and legalization of gambling. The other side of that coin is, for at home, the states themselves can issue licenses. And so what you have is you have an untapped market, from our opinion, of casinos that maybe sat back, or their states weren't online yet, and as this legalization is happening, they can quickly adapt and become a hub for sports programming, sports viewing. But unlike just going out and getting a standard cable subscription that they pay for, where they don't control the ad dollars, they don't control the experience for the end users. With our model, especially our new package called Cedar that we're launching, that technology can roll into any multimedia system, any Native American owned casino, or any casino for that matter, and instantly unlock a combat sports experience that's more in the lines of what I said prior. New leagues, new growth paradigms, new sports models that they can ultimately start pushing into their events windows, making it more exciting. And most importantly, they can control their ad relationship, their monetization, promote their own products, all on the content with rights control relationships to that distribution.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. So you are providing the casino operators with a package that includes um, the programming, uh, various different sport games that then they can offer this programming to their clients to bet on, but also within that programming, the casinos themselves can sell advertising spots to, let's say, local businesses within that area.
You nailed it. And not only that, they can also promote their own upcoming events. They can promote and can take over the advertising zone. They can promote their sponsors. Maybe it's an alcohol vendor. Maybe it's an upcoming ticket event that they're going to do, right? So all along the trail, they are also able to, decide with that inventory, do they want to promote local businesses and take dollars in that way? Do they want to promote their own products and services, or a combination of both within their own controlled network on top of that sports package? Yep. Yep.
Okay, and then so before this offering, like you said, they would have a cable subscription that they would have on the screen, and they not only would they, pay for the cable subscription, but the ads that are being shown in within that programming, they wouldn't make any money from those ads.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. The folks that they're actually paying for that service, for the cable subscription. They are not monetizing that service other than just it's entertainment in their bar. Yep. This way
Okay.
they get a little bit of both. They get the entertainment in the bar, they get the monetization facets, they get the relationships, then they can also build their own products like their own sports book into that experience. Yep.
In other words, you are helping those casinos create another source of income.
Very, very much so. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Or
Okay. So
augmenting their existing KPIs, right? Their
okay.
existing revenues.
So I understand it from the point of view of how they can monetize the content, but how does betting fit into this? So you have I don't know, a volleyball game or women's soccer on the screen. How does betting come into this? Sports betting.
Yeah. So couple ways. So number one, um, within the casino footprint or the casino four walls, a lot of these casinos have relationships with a sports book operator right today. And so those relationships can now be expressed directly within that content experience. Whereas before it was more of a second screen that was disconnected. We certainly, our technology supports second screen relationships and gamifies that experience, right? But they can also now synchronize that action to the viewing experience itself, very much like a Shazam for sports betting, if you think of it that way. Then on the principal screens or in the different experiences, there's additional advertising relationships or ways of promoting, the products and goods and the local businesses that surround that. And that's essentially, following in the footsteps of well-known strategies around what's called retail media or retail media network. So by compressing those two layers together, we're amplifying those revenues for the casino, and we're bringing their own sports betting products front and center, whether that's the relationship they have with a sports betting operator, or in many cases, a lot of casinos are now considering to launch their own sports book or do things that are in their own zone of productization around sports betting. I want to add one other point too. So that's, part that cedar package, that content, engagement, data, and advertising equals revenue package, is what we're talking about there. But we also have a line of business that supports those sports properties that are looking for enhanced digital distribution models that augment their existing distribution, their owned and operated footprint, or any syndication relationships where they want to couple their sport or their games or their events with a interactive sports betting experience that's attractive in those different states. And so that one distribution can have hyper localized sports betting relationships where the casinos can now plug into those architecture models as well. So then standard distribution in an at-home experience in a mobile app or on your TV can feature that local sports book.
When you were talking about helping these casinos develop their own booking, uh, so in other words, they take control of offering their own sports betting. How are they doing it now, and how much money, let's say, they're making now, the way their sports betting operates?
So every state is different. Some states required the sports books to have a relationship with a tribal nation, right? Other states are splitting their licensure structure between tribal nations and commercial casinos, um, or sports operations. It's really, kind of a, you know, like any kind of new market, right? And with 50 states in the nation and 38 of them now, I believe, legal. It's things are changing every day, right? I think for most of the Native American casinos, they sort of, other than some of the obvious shining examples like the Seminoles and the Hard Rock relationship, a lot of them had to sort of step back and watch what would happen, or see how they get in the game. No pun intended, or pun intended. But now that they've seen successes on national levels, they're looking at their own markets and saying, "Hey, well, why don't we do this, right? Why don't we start opening up our own operations, or why don't we partner in a more strategic way where we can earn more of the revenue?" And so I think that's really where our opportunity lives, to bring those new emerging platforms, because traditionally the difference between um, every sports book has been hard to kind of navigate. There's always things that some have more than others, right? But at the end of the day, the user acquisition costs for a sports book are very high. They're really high because the stickiness is not there to the application, because you can get that free play or that credit to your account, burn that out, then quickly move to a new book, right? And especially if you look at it, you're new and you're operating a new business like a sports book, this is a great way to plug into and focus on a local market versus trying to do a one focus nationally when you only care about California, for example.
Okay, so um, from a value creation point of view, the way you create value for casinos is you create another source of income from the advertising, having their own sports books, and you provide a packaged product to them. Now, after you provide that value to them, how is it that you will be getting paid?
Sure. Our revenues come from a traditional SaaS subscription model, number one. So, you know, just to the casino, or to the operator, or to the sports league, if they're using our tools and our services, we're charging a SaaS subscription, first and foremost. And that price points differentiate between on-prem, mobile usage, combination of both. Those are all still, those are all different facets. Then on top of that, we also, by providing the ad serve functions and the ad inventory model and definitions, we earn a piece of the ad revenue, because everybody shares in that, right? And then last but not least, the unique license classification we have in the United States allows us to occur to essentially earn from user acquisition fees. So as we bring new users into the ecosystem, or in some states, we can even get a percent of the handle itself, as the revenues grow.
To develop this technology that you have, your IP, what kind of money uh, did you spend to get to this point where you are right now, being able to offer this?
Yeah. So if we put aside all of the blood, sweat, and tears, right, that go into any kind of tech startup, right? Just pure capital into the company. Lifetime to date's been over about 20 million, right? To build the technology, to patent a lot of the intellectual property. You know, when you're doing first, right? You're really cutting new territory. And so, we were smart, I think, in that we were doing first. And as we were recognizing that we were doing first, we quickly moved to secure intellectual property rights around those first. And so when it comes to, the application of knowledge and data, we call it metadata, and organizing that, and building off of that to create decisioning and content recognition models. Those are a lot of the unique IP that we hold around this. So in real time, being able to tell an end user, this is exactly who scored that goal, push that knowledge set to their mobile phone, recognize it and display it on a television, align that to a sports betting function, set a rule or a condition that allows the advertiser to trigger on that. Like, let's, a shot on goal triggers a shirt for sale, or a shot on goal triggers an ad to be displayed, or recognizing a sponsorship and then setting up localization for car dealerships. All of those things, as they occur, are part of our IP stack. And that's really our unique proposition. And I think that's where most of the investment really can be couched. There's, of course, an investment in people. People are the ones that build those tools and build those functions. There's also an investment in the business itself and trade shows and stuff. But the bulk of that money that we've, spent on this lifetime to date has been really in the technology, the intellectual property, and the R&D.
It appears to me that the amount of money that you spend is almost equivalent to now, based on the stock price, to the market cap of the company. So, in other words, anybody that wants to buy some shares is paying the cost of what you spent to build this company. So there is some kind of margin of safety built into this. But now I always like to tell people, well, how do they make money on this? What kind of vision, what kind of roadmap you can give them if they choose to become part of the story?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of great announcements throughout the 2026 year, that we'll be excited to kind of tell people about, that continue to show not just proof of market, but acceptance of the technology in market, right? And there be well-respected brands that are going to help anchor those messages. And so what you're really looking at is growth, right? What is the growth of the technology's adoption, the use of the technology, the use of that intellectual property, that basis in market? We are in revenue today, so that's the good news. We're going to continue to scale that revenue, both organically and maybe even through some acquisitions. So these are all things that we're focused on as a strategy for the business. And I think that's what, if I were an investor, I'd be looking at, the growth goals and the application of the technology in market through 2026 and beyond.
Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to leave my listeners with about the company, yourself, or anything that you think is worth sharing?
No, I mean, I think that, I just want to encourage everybody to kind of stay tuned, right? To use that analogy, right? Because we are going to have some really exciting announcements. We're going to be doing some pretty big things next year. And I think, just continue to follow us. It's a great opportunity to, know the company right now, to understand it. And I think we look forward to showing everybody success continuously throughout the year.